Laura Ingalls Wilder. Laura Ingalls Wilder. Focus question. How was Laura's life both exciting and dangerous? The Prairie and the Big Woods. Laura Ingalls was born on February 7, 1867, in the woods of Pepin, Wisconsin. When Laura was just 2 years old, Ma and Pa Ingalls packed all their belongings into a covered wagon and headed toward Independence, Kansas. It was the first of many moves the Ingalls family would make during Laura's childhood. They were settler colonists, some of the first white settlers in the American West. Settler life. In the 1800s, settler colonists dreamed westward. The settlers cleared the forests and plowed up the sod or grassroots. They covered the prairie so they could grow crops. Settlers had to build, grow, knead, saw, and cook almost everything they needed in order to live. Laura formed vivid memories on the Kansas prairie. She remembered how the insects and birds sang in the waving grass. She remembered how the sunset colored the white horizon. These sorts of memories would help shape her famous books. Yet the family lived there for only about a year before they returned to the woods of Wisconsin. Do you know? During their time in Kansas, the Ingalls family mistakenly settled on Osage land. The Osage people had lived there for hundreds of years before white settlers arrived, but the U.S. government did not consider them citizens. In the late 1800s, it forced Osage people from their land and moved them to what is now Oklahoma. In Wisconsin, though, 4-year-old Laura discovered a wonderful new world. The big woods were dark, wild, and mysterious. Laura loved being outdoors, and on long winter evenings, Pa played his fiddle for the family. His music accompanied the happiest days of Laura's childhood. Her times. Everything from the little house was in the wagon except the beds and tables and chairs. Pa could always make new ones. Laura Ingalls Wilder. Pa Ingalls missed the open space of the prairies. When Laura was 7 years old, he moved with his young family in Minnesota. First, they moved into a house made of prairie sod, the thick grass that grew all around them. Later, Pa built a wood house and planted wheat near the town of Walnut Grove. Laura and her old sister Mary went to school. Laura loved reading, writing, and reciting. After a few months of happiness, her ship struck. Grasshoppers arrived in swarms as big as thunderclouds. They ate all the family's wheat. Having lost their crop, the Ingalls family moved to town and took odd jobs. Even little Laura cleaned and waited tables in a hotel. Then they lost their new baby brothers, Fetty, to a fever. The spirits lifted a little when another baby, Grace, arrived in 1877, but times remained tough. Mary fell ill. Either the illness or a stroke damaged the nerves of her eyes. No one knows for sure that caused the damage, but Mary would be blind for the rest of her life. Pa decided it was time to look west for a new start. He went ahead to Dakota Territory to work for the railroad. The family boarded a train in Walnut Grove and rode west to join him, settling in Dakota Territory. In Dakota Territory, there was just a railroad stop, not yet a town. The Ingalls family and a few other white families were the first citizens of Des Moines, South Dakota. As more settlers arrived, the Ingalls family moved to a homestead of few miles outside of town. Pa built a cabin, a stable, and a garden. When winter came, the family lived above their store in town, where the girls would be closer to the school. Do you know? The U.S. government encouraged white settlers to move west and offered homesteads, or nearly free living space, or on land stolen from native people, like many white settlers. Laura had racist views of the native people on whose land she lived. Her books often showed them in a negative way, while showing white settlers in a positive way. It was a lucky decision. One blizzard after another hammered the new town. The snow was so blinding that the girls couldn't find their way to school. Trains couldn't deliver food, and some families nearly starved. At last, the long winter broke, and the family returned to the homestead in the blooming Dakota Prairie. Young Lady Laura. Suffering passes while love is eternal. Laura Ingalls Wilder. Mary had heard about a college for blind students in Iowa, and she wanted more than anything to go there. Laura was now old enough to teach school, and she knew the income would help Mary pay for college. She expected a teaching job 12 miles from Des Moines. 16-year-old Laura bravely said goodbye to her family, but she dreaded being away from home for months. When the first week of school ended, she got a surprise. Old Zoe Wilder, a young homesteader she knew from Des Moines, pulled up to the schoolhouse in a beautiful house-drawn sleigh. Almanzo offered to bring Laura home on weekends. During their long drives across the prairie, their friendship blossomed into love. One night, Almanzo asked Laura to marry him. She said yes. Laura and Manly, as she nicknamed him, moved to his homestead outside Des Moines. Soon they welcomed a daughter, Rose. Then the young family was hit with a string of bad luck. A hailstorm destroyed their wheat crop, and then Laura and Manly fell ill. They both got better, but Manly would walk with a limp for the rest of his life. Laura gave birth to a baby boy, but he lived for only 2 weeks. Then their houses burned to the ground. Still a settler, Laura searched for a new place where they could get a fresh start. It wasn't long before she found her home. Sickness in settler days. Before the 20th century, people had few vaccines and very few effective medicines. Diseases were common and serious. Many members of Laura's family were touched by illness. This was not unusual for the times. Happiness as Rocky Ridge. It is the sweet, simple things of life which are the real ones after all. Laura Ingalls Wilder. At 27, Laura set out once more in a covered wagon. She and Manly bought a small farm near Mansfield, Missouri, in the foothills of the Ozark Mountains. It was raw, wooded, and rocky, but Laura instantly knew it was home. With her time, Rocky Ridge grew into a beautiful, successful farm. After so much wandering, Laura was content. In the time Laura's daughter Rose moved away to San Francisco. There she became a well-known journalist. She was making a living at something Laura herself had always loved, writing. Now that life on Rocky Ridge Farm was comfortable, could Laura do the same? The Little House books. Laura began to pour her memories onto the page. Sometimes she would stay up all night writing in a little desk Manly built for her. Soon she had written an entire book about her early years under the towering trees of Wisconsin. She called it Little House in the Big Woods. Rose sent it to a publisher. 64-year-old Laura didn't think much would come of it. After all, it was the 1930s. People had cars, electricity, radio who wanted to hear about doing backbreaking tours in a dark forest. The book was an immediate hit. The mailbox at Rocky Ridge overflowed with letters from young readers begging for more. Laura wrote about her time on the Kansas Prairie, in Little House on the Prairie, and near Walnut Grove, and on the banks of Plum Creek. The frightful winter in Des Moines became the long winter, and what followed became Little Town on the Prairie. Laura loved answering letters from her fans and traveling to reading and book signings. Yet she was always happy to return home to Manly and Rocky Ridge Farm. The couple both lived into their 90s. After her death in 1957, Laura Ingalls Wilder's books lived on. They even became a TV series in 1974. Her stories of settler life still delight young readers today. Her life became part of American history.